Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tamika Cage. I'm a security technical specialist at Microsoft, and I'm happy to be here today to talk about Microsoft and Elastic's partnership.
Thanks, Tamika. So before I introduce myself here, I got to give you a little background. When I went through this prep yesterday to come up here and come on stage, I was just informed that there was going to be some music. So we got some walk-up music. And then I realized that, man, I need to do something really cool for this walk-up music. And so you should have seen me last night in my room trying to figure out what to do. I was literally on YouTube looking at trying to figure out how to do the gritty. And so that is not as easy as you think it is. It looks really easy. I think I tore a meniscus trying to do it, so I did not try it today.
We could have practiced.
Yeah, I need a little bit more practice. One night is not going to do it. But anyway, my name is Bobby Suber. I'm a solutions architect for Elastic. We're here today to talk about one of our joint customers, the University Medical Center's journey from being reactive and moving to more proactive, with Elastic Security and the Elastic Stack deployed on Microsoft Azure. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to hand it over to Tamika here in a minute. She's going to kick this off and talk about the Microsoft and Elastic partnership. She'll hand it back to me. I'll go over the journey with the customer, what we did with them, and then I'll have her, close it out with some of additional benefits that you customers can get with the Microsoft and Elastic Azure native integration.
All right, so Microsoft and Elastic have partnered to provide seamless integration between Microsoft Azure and the Elastic Stack. So think Elasticsearch, Kibana, Beats, and Logstash. So this partnership allows customers to easily deploy, manage, and scale their Elastic Stack on Azure, but it also provides them access to Azure security and compliance features. And then the partnership includes joint go-to-market and selling efforts and technical collaboration to ensure that the Elastic Stack and Azure work together seamlessly. And speaking of seamless, there's also seamless billing, and customers can add third-party services to their Azure subscriptions, and then those services will appear on the same Azure bill. And basically all these benefits that you see on these slides, you can roll those benefits from Azure up into your Elastic workloads. And then I'll finish it up with our Microsoft Partner Awards, which is an annual awards partnership, awards program that highlights partners that basically create exceptional Microsoft solutions, exceptional solutions on Microsoft technology. And Elastic was a finalist in the commercial marketplace category.
Woo! All right. Okay, so I'm here to talk about the journey. So this, for me to really describe the journey with this shared customer, the best way for me to start is start with this. So imagine that you live in sunny California. You drive to work on the Pacific Coast Highway. You do it all the time. You know the route. You do it every day. You feel very safe when you're doing it, except for the fact that you know that there are others that are visitors to the area that's probably not paying attention. So you know it's dangerous, but you're used to it. You do it anyway. Until one day you're driving in. It's starting to rain. It's torrential rains, like it has been out there recently. It's actually been raining there for weeks, maybe months on end. And boom, you end up in this. This is how it started out for our customer, right? So they thought they were protected. They felt really secure where they were. They actually used a vendor that provided some managed security services for them. But that service was based off of Amazon's open distro for Elasticsearch. And as you know, that is not an Elasticsearch product. We don't support it. And it was not a good service for this particular customer. The reason it wasn't a good service is because they only received a couple alerts a month from the vendor, and so that wasn't providing a lot of value. When they went into this hole, that was a result of them getting popped, so they got ransomware, hit with ransomware, and so they thought it was time to make a change. And really, that change was they wanted to do something different, but they wanted to stay with Elastic. So I'll talk about what that journey looks like. There's some steps to it. So we'll start with the initial deployment on Microsoft Azure. Then we'll move into that transition to a production environment. So they had something that very specific that they wanted to accomplish, during that transition. We'll talk about that. The third piece of this, of becoming more proactive, is really about enabling the enterprise. And so not just focusing on some of those security use cases with SIEM and detections, but also extending out to the larger organization and delivering value there. And then I'll pass it back over to Tamika, and she'll talk about some additional benefits that you can get with the Microsoft Azure and Elastic native integration. Okay, so the initial deployment, this is really where we started proving out value. And this was when we deployed the POV on Microsoft Azure. That was the customer's choice. But really the first requirement for them was they wanted to gain full visibility and full control of their entire environment. They wanted to tend to their own garden. That's what they told us. And so one of the other things that they looked at was from a proof of value standpoint is they needed to get some data sources in very quickly so that they can prove out value. And so we talked about what's the best way to do that. You want to use your out-of-the-box integrations, or do you want to continue to do what you were doing before using Logstash and onboarding data with Logstash? And so they chose to use the O365 out-of-the-box integrations because with Logstash, even Logstash is awesome. It's a great Swiss Army knife. You can pull whatever data sources that you want with a Logstash, but there was a problem there with the way that it was originally implemented by the vendor, and that was they didn't map the fields to ECS format. And so, that's a big problem. And so that's basically garbage in. You get garbage in, you get garbage. Anyone? Thank you. Garbage in, garbage out. And so they went with, just for the POV, this O365 integration. And that went really well. And so the next step was really quickly, they said, this is great. I'm already getting detections, from this data that you're pulling in. Let's start talking about moving to production. But the one requirement that they needed to adhere to was that they wanted to actually keep that POV environment, which we were able to do that, and just expand with the data sources and move forward into production. So if you see on the left here, these are just some of the data sources that they onboarded. I'm not going to go over all of those, but they really started with, one of the ones they started with was the Elastic agent and the system integration. So being able to pull in those Windows event codes, being able to pull in, the Linux, varlog messages, those were really some of the first ones that they started with. They started pulling in, Tenable data, some additional networking data, and they decided that, as they continued to sort of build this out, that they wanted to move this to more proactive. And so that whole process we were involved with discussions around, workshops, getting people trained. There was consulting. We had our customer success manager, Cora, was involved in this. I was involved with some Kibana workshops, really get the folks and the team trained up. And now they're at the point where, they have all their detections rules enabled. They're using Elastic Defend now, even though they already have another EDR solution to protect some of their critical resources. They're testing that out, and they love their OS query integration, and so they've actually downloaded, some of those playbooks, on GitHub, so that they have some response actions that they're delivering with that. So this, going from being more reactive to more proactive, this is a journey. This is not a destination. We got a lot of work to go here, but they are in a really, really good state. So. One of the other things that as we transition to more, to being more proactive, and from a security perspective, another requirement that they had was they needed to keep that data for a lot longer period of time. They were only keeping, that security-related data for 90 days, which is not long enough. That's not long enough from a dwell time perspective. And so to be able to do that, we have a perfect architecture within Elastic that allows them to do it. And there's two things from a Microsoft standpoint that allows us to create an index lifecycle policy like this for the customer. Number one is we need to get that data ingested very quickly into what's called our hot layer, and then move it out very quickly, and so we can take advantage of what's called searchable snapshots. And that searchable snapshots will be backed by Azure Blob Storage at cold and even frozen. So if you're not familiar with that, at a very high level, what we do is you've got data coming into hot. There's going to be multiple shards of that data into hot. We have high density CPUs at hot that we use from Microsoft. Once we transition to cold, we remove those replicas, so we save space and so we save resources, we save cost as we transition to cold, and we can search that data, and that search is very fast, very similar to hot, and then we leave it there for a certain amount of time. In this case of this customer, it's 35 days in cold, 2 days in hot, and then the rest of it goes up to a year when it goes into Azure Blob Storage. But the great thing about Azure Blob Storage with Elastic, when it's an Elastic Cloud, you can search that data directly, and you can get those results back in very fast, depending how much data that is. And I say very fast as I compare that to other solutions out there in the market. It's extremely fast. We're talking about minutes, and we're not talking about a coffee break or a lunch break or a day break. Next thing we did was we started to enable the enterprise, and this goes back to doing or implementing additional use cases beyond security. So first thing we did was we worked with the networking team, and actually most of this work was done by the security team to help the networking team, get them trained up. And they had a project where they were changing out their wireless access points. And so they used Elastic to monitor all of the different endpoints that were trying to connect to the old SSIDs. So totally, I want to call it random use case, but outside of security, they use it that's a part of their daily workflow to be able to understand which devices needed to be updated. They brought on the Cisco ICE data to be able to, as part of that. They also built out some Palo Alto, some custom dashboards, so that anytime that they had a suspect IP that they wanted to look at, they just entered it into the dashboard. They search on it. I can see that, hey, this IP is talking to all of these different other devices, other IPs. They built out a DNS security audit dashboard. So as you can imagine what that looks like, they have certain DNS servers in their environment. They also built a map so that if some device within their environment is connecting to some DNS server outside of their geolocation, that's a problem for them. And they're looking at how chatty certain DNS servers were. They brought their DevOps team in. Their DevOps team supported the web applications and their back-end databases. The WebOps team also took it a step further, and they started using what's called app search. And so if any folks are using enterprise search or app search today, they used it to crawl their internal websites. And so that project is underway where they've already got the data onboarded, and they're using they're updating their front end web applications to support that. And lastly here, they brought the help desk on board. The help desk was actually able to get rid of a solution that they use for authentications, especially specifically lockouts, since the team already had that authentication data with people trying to log in, getting locked out. There was no reason to have another solution that did the same thing, so they're actually able to save some money in that aspect.
So now let's talk about the benefits of native integration. So if you're not familiar, that's just basically being able to plug and play when it comes to integrating Elastic solutions with Azure. Basically, so you do not have to configure or do any development work as much as possible. So you're able to easily leverage the capabilities of multiple Azure services and build and run your applications in the cloud. So first we have discovery. That just makes it easy for users to find Elastic when they come into the Azure ecosystem. So think like the marketplace. Then we have lifecycle management. So when you're using the Elastic's managed service on Azure, what we can do as partners to make this as smooth as possible for you, provisioning, deploying, scaling, they're all made easier so you can get time to value as quick as possible. And then we have data onboarding, which is really big because that can also be such a hassle when you're trying to do anything with the data. And that is a key step here because you need to be able to, again, get to time to value as quickly as possible. So making all this as easy as possible natively is the goal here with using Elastic services on top of Azure.
And we will leave you with this. There's the QR code here. If you're interested in learning more about the native integrations with Elastic and Microsoft, please scan that. I know all the security folks are saying, no, don't scan it, don't scan it. It's been vetted. I just did it just to make sure. I did it when I first got the QR code, and I just did it a few seconds ago, so nothing has changed. I put my word on it. I put my word on it.
And it may prompt you to put in your information. If you scroll down, you can select skip and get to the good stuff without.
That's a very good point. So if you don't want to be bothered by the marketing folks, the inside sales folks, just skip it and you can get to the good stuff. That's it.